All right, and welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take. Welcome in to Predictions versus Reality. The off-season series continues with one of the most interesting teams that came across the 2024 NFL season, that being the Carolina Panthers, the team that started off just as bad as they were in 2023, but at the end of 2024, Carolina Panthers fans are feeling something they have not felt in a long time, and that is hope. Before we begin with predictions versus reality for the Panthers, if you know what predictions versus reality is all about, you can go ahead and hit the timestamp down below. For those of you that don't know, I made a schedule prediction video for every single team back in August. And in there, I obviously predicted the record, but I also explained why I thought they would finish that way. So we're going to look at where I thought they would be, and then we're going to look at where did they actually end up, what went right, what went wrong. In this case, there's going to be both for the Carolina Panthers, as I'll get to here in just a little bit. And then ultimately, we're going to finish off by talking about what are their three biggest needs going into the offseason, and then how are they going to get better overall. So where did I have them back in August? I had the Carolina Panthers projected to go 7-10. I had them going 7-10 because I thought this team would take a logical step forward. I'm talking improvement with Bryce Young. You have a young rookie head coach who's an offensive mind that's a better fit for Bryce Young on paper there. And also, they had a lot of young pieces on offense. They drafted Xavier Legette in the first round, Jonathan Brooks in the second, Jatavion Sanders, a tight end out of Texas, in the fourth. They added a lot of young talent on the offensive side of the ball. And so, to me, I was like, okay, there's a lot of youth here, but there's a lot of upside. And I decided, okay, here's this team's going to start slow. We're going to see a slow start from the Carolina Panthers, but they were going to get better as the year went on, which in a way I was still kind of right about. Of course, the win column didn't reflect that, but if you look at the Carolina Panthers from week 1 to week 18, they're a vastly different football team. But then again, along with that, and also they lost Brian Burns. They had traded him for nothing practically to the New York Giants. So losing your best defender, one of the better edge rushers in the NFL, there's going to be some growing pains on the defensive side of the ball. So 7-10 was kind of felt right. It felt like, again, with a logical improvement on the offensive side of the ball, and with a rookie head coach and losing Brian Burns, I thought there was going to be some growing pains along with that, but a step forward nonetheless because the Carolina Panthers in 2023 only won 2 or 3 games. So where did they actually end up? What happened with the Panthers? Well, they missed the mark. They ended up finishing 5-12, and their offense overall finished 29th, and their defense finished dead last. The defense, I expected it to not be great, but I didn't expect it to be horrible. I thought that this defense, even without Brian Burns, would at least be able to get some production. I mean, you still have Derek Brown at defensive tackle, Shaq Thompson at linebacker, who's now set to be a free agent. You had J.C. Horn at corner. Like, you had good players on the defensive side of the ball, right? They also had Josie Jewell at linebacker, right? Had a couple other players there in the secondary that were okay. But no, they just flat out were awful, and the void that Brian Burns left was felt heavily. They were terrible at getting after the quarterback. They were one of the worst, if not the worst, in the NFL at getting after the quarterback. They were not that good there. And offensively, of course, it started out awful, but they did get a little bit better as the year went on. Their 3 best wins, in my opinion, were against the New York Giants, where they won 20-17 in overtime in London. They beat the Arizona Cardinals 36-30 in overtime at the end of the year. And then the final game of the year at Atlanta, they beat the Atlanta Falcons 44-38 in overtime. And these 3 wins, I mark these as the 3 best wins for one particular reason, and that these wins are what you would call a culture win. These are wins that you get where no matter the fact that your record, you're 5 wins, you only have a few wins, like, it does not matter. This team still fought. They tried to win, and guess what? They worked their butts off and got the win. And when you see how the players rallied around their coach, Dave Canales, how they rallied around Bryce Young, and really how they rallied around each other and how they fought for each other, those wins like that, those are culture wins. Those are wins that the players that are there now, that are going to be there hopefully for the next decade, are going to remember as building blocks for their franchise and for that culture. So that's why I have those as the 3 best wins, and they were all really good wins regardless for a team that was struggling on defense and had issues on offense. That they were able to churn out these wins when it really mattered, and overtime's a great way to do it. The Cardinals were, they're a playoff hunt team. The Atlanta Falcons were also a team in the playoff hunt. Had they have won, they would have had a chance to get into the playoffs if Tampa lost to New Orleans in Week 18. And the New York Giants, they were just straight up awful. But at the same time, Carolina showed that compared to the New York Giants, they might be actually going somewhere compared to the New York Giants, where I think they're going nowhere right now. So that stands for something. But getting into what actually happened here specifically, we'll start with what went wrong for Carolina. The first one was the offensive line play was just straight up trash almost the entire year. They really didn't improve early on, and the run game started off inconsistent, and Bryce Young, he looked so bad that he got benched. He got benched this year, and then at the beginning of this year, and then week 3 or week 4, Danny Dalton started, and they completely destroyed the Raiders, I think. Can't remember who, it was against the Raiders or something like that, but they had a really good game on offense, and the offense looked completely different under Andy Dalton. And at that point, people were starting to speculate, including myself, is Bryce Young's career over already? Is he already done in Carolina? Was he really the problem? And well, after that game, everything went right back down to earth. Everything fell right back down. They continued being awful, and then Andy Dalton was benched, and then he got hurt, and then Bryce Young stepped in, played okay, and then stringed a couple games where it was okay, got a little bit better, and then ultimately he looked really, really good at the end of the year. But back to their points of what went wrong, the youth on offense, while I thought was going to be, like I said, I knew it was going to be a slow start, but I thought it would improve. It really didn't improve, and the youth on this team, along with the offense and the head coach, because the offensive head coach, it reared its head. And Adam Thielen and Tommy Tremble were the only contributing veterans. It ultimately showed that it was going to be a huge uphill battle. I mean, Xavier Legette, very talented guy, but kind of more raw-ish as a prospect compared to other guys coming out of the draft, right? And then, Jonathan Brooks, he got hurt, bam, done for the year. Jatavion Sanders played a little bit, not too much. Tommy Tremble was the starter the entire year, so there is that. So the only, they really didn't get a lot out of their youth. Right? Xavier Legette had some moments, but really didn't finish all that great. He actually finished up with only 497 yards and 4 touchdowns off of 49 catches, right? And you look at 7th-round rookie Jalen Coker out of Holy Cross. He only had 478 yards and 2 touchdowns, although he did have that game against Dallas, so that stands for something. But if these guys are some of your top receivers, that's not going to cut it. And then you look at Adam Thielen. He was the leading receiver. He had 48 catches, 615 yards, 5 touchdowns. Even then, they simply just did not get enough production out of anybody. And when I talk about Adam Thielen and Tommy Tremble being the most contributing veterans, I mean, they really didn't do all that much. They really did not do all that much at all. And this offense, which is built on youth, showed that it's very, very young and, in turn, inexperienced. That is the big takeaway there. And injuries on offense also did hurt them. The top 7 receivers on their team, which included running backs, receivers, tight ends, played a possible 89 out of 119 games. Only 3 out of 7 of those guys played 15-plus games. That being Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and then Chuba Hubbard. That was it. Maybe Jalen Coker was in there too. I can't remember. But either way, they simply could not stay healthy enough as well. So that also hampered this offensive production. But as we noted, as the season got better for Carolina statistically, when everybody was healthy near the end of the year, things did improve and things did look better. But the injuries didn't stop on that side of the ball. They went to the other side of the ball as well. Derek Brown, the star defensive tackle, after week 1 got hurt and was done for the year. So your other really good player on your defensive line is now gone. So no good defensive tackle, no good edge rusher, and next thing you know, you got a defensive line that simply was not good in 2024. And then Shaq Thompson, who's going to be a free agent, he played in 4 games, And then injuries to multiple linebackers in that spot and also a bunch of D linemen. They just wore the group thin. The group position groups just were really worn thin overall. And the defense, as I mentioned, was just garbage. It was simply garbage. And regardless of what the offense was going to do, if they were good or bad, it was going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be a tough task for this offense to be able to overcome that. And they ultimately, with their record, showed that they couldn't overcome that. But as we mentioned with Carolina, time and time again, they started off bad, but they got a lot better. So in that aspect, what kind of went right for the Carolina Panthers? Well, the first one was Bryce Young. He greatly improved. After he had a 2-game win streak, he beat the Giants, right? And then he beat, can't remember who they beat afterward. I can't remember that in that 2-game win streak. I can't remember what it was. But he had a 2-game win streak. He looked promising, and he continued to stack good games. He didn't put up amazing numbers, but he looked like a NFL quarterback. He looked much better than he did as a rookie. Of course, like again, that's not a high bar, but he looked like more of a guy that he looked like coming out of Alabama and a quarterback that looked like he belonged in the league. Again, not mind-melting numbers, but he was playing well. He was consistent. That's what is the big takeaway for Bryce Young. And he's honestly a big reason why they were more competitive in the second half of the year. With Andy Dalton, things would have probably been more stagnant. Things probably would have been more average. And then with Bryce Young, you saw his dynamic playmaking ability. The stuff that he was able to use with the plays he was able to make with his legs, showing who the guy that he was coming out of Alabama, right? You saw what element that he could bring to this offense, and it elevated them a lot. He had games where he had multiple rushing touchdowns. He had games where he had 50 to 60 rushing yards because he was able to run around, buy time, extend plays, and then run for additional yardage when he needed to, because that's the type of thing that Bryce Young brings to your offense. And we saw that. Another thing was Dave Canales looks to be a promising head coach. You look at how Bryce Young improved. You look at his history of reviving quarterbacks in their careers like Geno Smith in Seattle or Baker Mayfield in 2023 with Tampa. They had a top 10 offense that year, right? And pairing him with Bryce Young was a good match when it comes to overcoming adversity and catering to his strengths, which showed Bryce Young becoming the improviser that he was known for, like I mentioned. And the offensive line, while it was trash for most of the year, did improve a little bit to a point where they went from trash to below average, which did help. And then Chuba Hubbard, the next thing that went right for them, he had, let me look up for a second. Chuba Hubbard had 250 carries, 1,195 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He exploded onto the scene practically and became a focal point of that offense that really helped them operate with the lack of continuity and overall experience at the receiver position, including tight end. So having him back there provided some sense of stability for this offense and gave them something to build off of. And the more they used Chuba Hubbard, the better this offense did improve as the year went along. And of course, he got his contract extension, and the Miles Sanders contract that they gave him was terrible. But Chuba Hubbard, in turn, has been really good. So that type of contract has kind of leveled out a bit. So that was nice. And then lastly, the culture. I mentioned the culture in their 3 best wins. When you look at a team that's 5 wins, you win only 5 games, you tend to see players look dejected. They're not giving their full effort, right? You can tell when a 5-win team is a truly 5-win team. But this team did not look like one. They fought like they were a team that was trying to get into the playoffs. They fought like a team that was better than they actually were. And that is a testament to Dave Canales. That is a testament to culture. Culture is not about what your team is like when you're at your best. Culture is about who you are when you're at your worst. And when this team was at their worst, they didn't give up. They didn't quit. They kept on fighting. And guess what? It translated into 3 really good wins. Like I mentioned above, 2 of those against Atlanta and Arizona coming at the end of the year. Very, very solid culture wins. Wins that prove that these players want to win. They know how to win. They know that they can be better. And Dave Canales has been able to get that out of them. And that's a big credit to him and the rest of the staff for being able to get these players to rally and to fight when most teams in that situation and most players would be out of there. They would not be as motivated to go out on the field. That being said, what do the Panthers do now? Well, the three biggest needs on their team, of course, number one has to be edge. There is a huge Brian Burns-sized filled hole that needs to still be filled. And with Carolina picking at the top of the draft, they have a top 10 draft pick. You have a lot of people available. You can pick Mykel Williams. You can pick Nick Scoriton out of Texas A&M if you decide to trade down, right? There's other guys like James Pierce, Mike Green. Like this edge rusher class, I've talked about this, is a deep class. So you can probably come away with a top guy there in the top 10, or you could trade down, get more picks to keep building your team, and you can get one in the middle of the first or near the end of the first. You can do that because of the depth at edge in this draft class. The next one is wide receiver. You drafted Xavier Legette in the first round, so I wouldn't expect them to draft another one in the first round. That would be a little bit too much of spending. That'd be too much like putting assets into wide receiver, spending 2 first-round picks when this roster needs a lot of holes that needs to be filled. So that's definitely going to be like a second-round pick. But maybe if you trade down, maybe in a trade-down scenario, maybe you can get an edge rusher, and maybe you get enough picks to trade back into the first, and maybe get like a Luther Burden, right? Or get like a Mika Egbuka, possibly, right? That's, and kind of a stretch because they're probably going to go in the middle of the first round if I'm being honest. But I mean, if they're there and there's no good edge rusher available that you don't like, maybe you take them in the first round. I wouldn't be against it. They need wide receiver. I mean, they have Xavier Legette. They have Jalen Coker and Adam Thielen. He's aging. He's going to be retired soon, right? So you need another X-factor player at that position, although I probably would rather go do that in free agency and get a more experienced guy, right? But no one that's not as old as Adam Thielen, of course. But maybe they do definitely need another receiver to help this offense out. And the last one is cornerback. J.C. Horn is a good corner, but he needs someone to go aside him to help this secondary out. And if you get a young edge rusher, you get a good corner to pair with J.C. Horn. I would sign someone in free agency and then draft one on day 2 if you can, if the value is right. The cornerback class is not fantastic, but maybe that's another spot you could pick in the first round. I'm looking at like a Shaylin Revel out of East Carolina. He's one of the best corner prospects available. Will Johnson out of Michigan. People don't know where he's going to fall, right? But, he got hurt last year when he was in his final year at Michigan. But the year before, had he come out, he would have been a top 10 pick. And a lot of people had him as top 10 pick going into 2024 before his injury. So if you can get that guy healthy, you could get a top 10 player in the draft at a much better value if you decide to trade down. So there is a good possibility to get a corner in the first round as well, and I would not be against that either. So I would draft one either way. Maybe you get one on day 2, day 3, and then you sign one in free agency. I would personally do both. That way you get a guy that can help you win right away and contribute right away, and a guy that doesn't really have to, but can in a lesser role, right, where they can, be more comfortable and develop properly. So there is also that. And to round it all off, this team looked like, it reminded me a lot of the 2019 Miami Dolphins team. They were another 5-win team that was awful in the first half, but in the second half, they played much better. And you saw wins like the New England win in week 17, where, that's a culture win. That is a culture win, and a credit to Brian Flores at the time for getting these guys to go out there and keep on fighting, despite the fact that that was the year where they were going to tank for Tua, right? That was a tank for Tua year. And it reminds me a lot. So you get a positively building culture, and you have good pieces to build around regardless. And then if you add some good veteran players on offense and really overhaul this defense and add to this offensive line, obviously you can't do it in one offseason, but with where they're at, they can make plenty of moves and really make a step forward in the right direction for real this time compared to what I thought they would actually do this year, and they didn't. Here's a real opportunity to take a step forward. And with that being said, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Carolina Panthers fans feel something that they probably haven't felt in a very long time, which is hope. They have hope that Bryce Young can develop and that Dave Canales can get the most out of him. They showed a lot of good things and a lot of promising things at the end of this year. They really, really did. I don't want to take, despite the 5-win record, you have to watch them. You have to watch the games. You have to watch the tape. This team at the end of the year was not playing like a 5-win team. I'm not going to say they played like a playoff team, but they played like a team that had something way more to fight for than just 5 wins. They played a lot better than what a 5-win team would tell you. So that being said, I'm very interested in what this team's going to do in the offseason. Because if they can make really good moves, they don't have to make very big splashy moves, but if they can make really good moves and improve holes on their roster that really need filled the most, maybe next year, instead of a 5-win team, we could see a 7-win team. We could see an 8-win team. The thing is, this is going to take time. It's going to take patience. And they have the right pieces in place, I think, to make that happen, which all that's being said, again, this will be one of the most interesting teams in the offseason for me to follow and look on as we go through free agency and through the draft. But that is going to do it for me today, guys. Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my analysis of the Carolina Panthers and how their season went. Make sure to also hit the like button and subscribe if you are brand new around here on the channel. And pressing those 2 buttons would help me a lot. And also it would help me continue to spread my passion of football to more and more people. So I would really appreciate it if you do. And of course, if you want to be a Shumake Take fan, that's how you do it. Either way, also make sure you guys share the video, whether you're sharing it on social media or spreading it by word of mouth. Getting everybody locked in and locked on to the Shumake podcast is paramount to experience some of the best football analysis on YouTube. Sure, I'm not really quite yet. I'm still very, very new to this thing. I've only been doing this for 1 season, but I am very confident in myself and my abilities. So, hey, I'll butter myself up a little bit. But make sure that you get everybody locked in, locked on to the Shumake Take podcast, because I have come out with great content for you. I'm coming out with great content for you guys every single week. Predictions versus reality will continue after you watch the Saints and the video here with the Panthers. The next group we're going to talk about is the NFC East, which is a big mixed bag. We got a whole lot of good. We got a whole lot of bad. Think about it. We got the Eagles to talk about, who's won the Super Bowl. And we got to talk about the Giants, who have the third overall pick, third. That looked like a 2. That's a 3 in the NFL draft. So we got a wide spectrum of teams and where they finish to talk about with that division, which is going to make it that much more exciting. But that is going to do it for me today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.